2020 meeting of the Las Virgenes-Malibu Council of Governments. As we do in Westlake, I'm going to dispense with the reading of the meeting information in the beginning. Anyone who needs to make a public comment can get the information from our website, or can contact Terry at LVMCOG.org. So I'll proceed with the roll call. Agoura, Hills.
Dennis Weber's here.
Okay.
Oh, and Elise Buckley Weber's
Yes.
here too.
Okay. Malibu.
Karen Fair is here.
Mikey
Hi,
Pearson's
Karen.
here.
Hi, Mikey.
Hey there, how we doing?
Good. Hidden Hills. I see Laura.
Here.
I'm
Dirk.
here.
Dirk Levitt's here.
Okay. And Alicia, we saw you.
I'm here. Hi.
Hi. Okay, I need a motion to approve today's agenda.
So moved.
So moved by Stuart.
Second by Alicia.
Thank you. And roll call again. Agoura.
Aye.
Aye. Sorry, Dennis.
No problem. It's okay.
Westlake, aye. Malibu.
Aye.
Hidden Hills.
Aye.
Calabasas.
Aye.
Thank you. Now we come to the portion of our meeting for public comment. Mr. Dipple, do we have any members of the public who wish to comment either via Zoom or in writing this morning?
I have not received anything via email or phone. However, I don't know if there's anyone that's on the line that wants to participate.
Okay, if anyone is on the Zoom call and wants to make a public comment this morning, please raise your hand so we can see you. I'll give you a moment to do that. I don't see anything. If
Looks, we have Bruce Silverstein.
okay, Mr. Silverstein.
Thank you. Hello. Good
Please
morning, everybody.
proceed.
Actually, I did send an email to Mr. Dipple 3 days ago, 2 or 3 days ago. I raised three matters that I would like to speak about. So in any event, it doesn't matter since I've been called on. I appreciate that.
Yeah, please. You have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
All right. So first of all, my name is Bruce Silverstein, and I recently ran for Malibu City Council. I wanted to introduce myself because unless something material changes in the vote, I'll be elected in the next few weeks. I received the highest number of votes for Malibu City Council so far. It appears that's going to remain, but it's unclear for certain. I was a corporate lawyer for 34 years. Malibu doesn't have any other lawyers on city council. It hasn't for a long time, which is one of the reasons I ran. I was disturbed, I have to say, by the city attorney and city manager of Malibu, as are a number of residents of the city. I ran on a platform of change with respect to government reform, environmental matters, public safety, and fiscal responsibility. And the next highest votes were received by Steve Uring, a retired business executive who ran on a similar platform. In fact, although we didn't run together, we endorsed each other and recommended each other. I want to compliment you on the fact that your Zoom meeting shows all participants. Malibu refuses to do this. I've been complaining about that for a number of months. They won't even show public participants. It's very odd. In any event, within days of our election, our city attorney, Christy Hogan, announced her retirement effective the day after the new city council is seated. She's been the Malibu city attorney since the city was incorporated. There's not been a professional search for a city attorney, and I know your cities have fine city attorneys, and I'm hopeful that I might be able to hear in the future from you about how you've selected your city attorneys and what you think of your city attorneys. I'd like to understand what you believe to be best practices for selecting city attorneys, because we don't have a history of that. And lastly, but not least, as you likely know, there have been 3 fires in the past 2 weeks in East Malibu near Topanga. A homeless man was arrested in connection with the last fire, and it seems likely, but not necessarily the case, that the other 2 were caused by people who lived in the hills where the fires were caused. As you know, fires do not recognize political boundaries, and a fire in Malibu threatens all of the cities of this COG, as well as a fire in any of your cities affect Malibu. This is a danger we're going to have to continue to live with unless something is done to disabuse the authorities of their fear of the decision in Martin versus Boise, which doesn't in any way prevent enforcement of law against camping on public land, especially when it presents a fire danger or other danger to the health, safety, and welfare of the community. And there are other things about the Martin decision that are misunderstood and require clarification. And I'm hoping that our cities might be able to work together to find ways to overcome the incorrect fears of enforcement of laws because of this one decision of the Ninth Circuit, which is very narrow, very limited, and expressly states numerous exceptions. But in any event, I wanted to start off just by introducing myself. I know that we'll be meeting each other hopefully one day in person. We don't know when that will come, obviously, but I think this is a great forum you have, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Appreciate it. Anybody else wishing to make a public comment this morning?
Would you like to make public comments? Okay, I guess not.
No? Okay. Any comments in response to Mr. Silverstein's comments from the board? Do we do
I
that?
only thought that, would the captain like to make a comment?
If Captain Becerra wishes to make a comment, that's fine.
No, I don't want to make a comment right now specific to that issue, but I'll address part of that issue during my crime report.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, so there being no more public comments, we're now moving to the consent calendar. I need a motion to, unless someone has something they would wish to pull from the consent calendar for discussion, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar this morning.
I'll make the motion to approve the consent calendar.
Need a second?
I'll second. It's Karen.
Thank you. Roll call, Agoura Hills,
Aye. Dennis Weber.
Westlake, aye. Malibu,
Aye, Karen.
Hidden Hills,
Aye.
Calabasas.
Aye.
Okay, consent calendar is approved 5-0. Mr. Dipple, this brings us to our information items for this morning.
The first item is Senator Stern, but before Mr. Silverstein, I will send you a private chat, and I just was trying to look through my email and I didn't see an email from you. I apologize for that. I would like to follow up with you, so we'll figure out a way to do that.
Thank you.
And then let's see. I know that Senator Stern is participating in the information portion of the meeting. I see you, Jeremy. Is Henry online? Oh, there.
Yeah,
Hey, Henry.
here.
I'm here.
You see him here, down here, yeah, both of them.
You guys are up.
Go ahead, Henry, or Jeremy, or both.
You know him. You love him. He's your
Oh my
state
God.
senator, right out of Malibu.
Too early. Oh my God. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jeremy.
Yeah, really good. Just pump me up a little bit. I'm a little run down this morning, but it's nice to see all your faces. So I actually, how much time, Terry? Like 5 minutes here? I can say a few things and then take any questions that's on anyone's mind right now.
Entirely up to the board.
Okay. Well, I'll just hit a couple quick high level ones and then see how you guys want to roll with it. But I'll just say,
I'll cut you off when you've gone over your time. Don't worry about that.
yeah, I don't want to just talk though, Kelly. I'd love to hear some feedback. So I'm trying to sort of gather ourselves fiscally after this election cycle, and one of the big things in Sacramento obviously will be about a $20 billion hole in the budget. So A lot of the ambitions that we've had for spending will be truncated, obviously, putting on top of that the new bond that just passed, which will eat another 250 million out of the budget. But that said, we're still going to make a big push like we did at the end of session for wildfire resilience funding, and that's still going to be a top priority. I am going to be bringing back a bigger version of the bond also that we had, which would have invested in recycling, water recycling infrastructure like the kind Las Virgenes and Triunfo has been piloting, but to really scale that and to get a re-injection of water funding, it would sort of be a more comprehensive look at climate resilience. So upfront funding for wildfire mitigation, some flood management dollars in there as well. So we'll see. I think it was political malpractice for us not to have given voters a chance to vote on wildfire this November. I think they would have approved it, but there was a lot of reticence in light of our fiscal strains from COVID and the broader tensions around whether the U.S. Senate is going to act and whether we're going to get sort of our next round of COVID relief through, which is looming over all our heads. And I know it's looming over your heads. We spend almost every waking hour of our days in the district office dealing with EDD. That's the main thing we work on, and that's Jeremy and his team just dealing with people at the end of their rope. So it's not a good situation there, but that's one issue I'd love some feedback and input on, everything from like telecommunications infrastructure and backup power generation to like strategic invasive grass management, things like that. We are de-emphasizing though in our region, and we're going to keep pushing back on CAL FIRE around sort of prescribed burns and sort of clearance approaches, but much more narrow focused approaches like managing state public lands near our HOAs. We've been looking at a lot of the HOAs and neighborhoods in our areas that abut state public lands that may be problematic. And I know Hidden Hills and Calabasas in particular, we've been looking at some of the properties. If you guys have neighborhoods that you feel are abutting problematic stretches of especially state lands, we'd really love that feedback. We're really trying to inventory our region and get them to start managing it better. But I think it takes a partnership because they're going to say, well, have the homes been hardened in that area? So I think that's going to be the sort of, everyone sort of goes together. MRCA and state parks step up and start and manage some of their land better while we incentivize those homeowners to just do simple hardening measures. We're not talking about, cutting out your deck. It's more like just gasketing your vents, managing your gutters, a lot of these basic things. So we're trying to get this $100 million home hardening fund, but I think a lot of our residents, it's not so much a matter of money, it's more a matter of awareness and direction. So I'm game to partner with you guys on that work. The last thing I'd touch on, just for any feedback you might have, is from a development perspective, I'm seeing Alicia, we'll look at that one. Please throw them in the chat, or we can follow up on specific neighborhoods. That'd be really helpful. The last thing I would just throw out there is from a development housing perspective, I'm going to be reintroducing some version of SB 474 from last session, which was a bit of a sledgehammer approach to a development in very high fire severity zones. That was a moratorium essentially on new development in very high fire severity zones. And I couldn't get a hearing last year on that measure, but we are going to come back and take another crack at it. Our modest measure that would have amended RENA, SB 182, was vetoed by the governor. That's something for you to be aware of. It's a tricky path through the governor's office right now, even that modest bit of reform to say that you could relax RENA over a, say, 8 to 10 year period of time and take into account fire hazard. Even that was too much for this governor to sign. So we're gonna have to be tough and push. And I think we're really gonna count on you guys through this COG to help build a statewide coalition here for us that we can get the bill heard. And I think we can get something out of the Senate. I've talked to the president of the Senate, and I'm gonna be leading our wildfire working group now that few members have retired and sort of taking the reins there, still running the resources committee. And so expect a hearing early on in the year where we look at some of these issues around, frankly, some of the development pressures you all have been facing and your testimony in that process and the jam you've been put in around some of your local ADU issues, for instance, or housing issues, I think would be ripe. We just got to position it right. And I think that's going to be really important, is trying to find space for ourselves so that we don't just get yelled out of the conversation as NIMBYs here, but really from a fire hazard and public safety perspective, how we can do a better job. So that's working with maybe having our fire officials testify, looking at evacuation patterns, but there is some mitigation I've been looking at. So like a 474 kind of framework, unless you adopted comprehensive community hardening guidelines. One thing to look at, just to study up on, Terry, there's a guidance coming from OPR that's being approved shortly by the governor on new community-wide fire hazard preparedness guidelines. That may be what unlocks this thing where we can break an impasse with the governor's office, but it's a new sort of CEQA guidance document that may help communities deal with the fire and public safety elements of their general plan updates or of specific plans or even of individual projects. So I think that'll be out. We'll see if they approve it. It's sitting in the governor's office right now, but I think it'll get approved.
Okay.
And so something to keep an eye on. So that, as you can tell, pretty laser focused on wildfire and COVID and then climate, but up for talking about anything else you guys want to talk about. Recycling plastics, that's going to come up again. Anyway, doors open. We love you guys.
Yeah, Henry, can you talk a little bit about the recycling? I did see an email come through about, I can't pinpoint the name of the AB something yesterday, but yeah, what is happening on that end?
I think that you'll see probably the same bill get brought. There's a bill that sort of set a 75% diversion target of single-use plastics by I think 2035. Sort of high level. People couldn't quite get their heads wrapped around it. It may come back again, but there's an alternative measure that may be a little bit simpler for people to understand that could be emerging around just investing in the recycling infrastructure itself and in the building on these market development zones that only had about $10 million in our past proposal, but funding it through a reworking of the CRV where you'd have a 1 cent fee, sort of rejigger the whole thing. So a 1 cent fee on things that are completely recyclable, 2 on things that are difficult to recycle, like certain kinds of plastics, and then a 3 cent on things that are not recyclable at all, like styrofoam. And on that sort of 1, 2, 3 scale, there's a way to rework it so that it sort of generates revenue, but doesn't significantly increase costs on sort of, the most vulnerable people who just rely on whatever kind of containers they can to get their stuff. But the real thing is if we can get, $4 billion more out of the system to start rebuilding and retrofitting our municipal recovery facilities or, local collection spots, that's really where, at least that's where I'm going to be focused, is more on the money and the investment side and less so on like getting so fixated on a target. And I think the administration's actually there. And I think we've got some partners in the assembly. So I think there's going to be movement there. So with this new approach, I'd love to get you guys some more detail. This is all very like early stage. None of this has been introduced, but that's the scuttlebutt behind the scenes.
Thank you, Henry. Anybody else have any questions for Henry or Jeremy? Stuart?
Good morning, Henry.
Good morning, Stuart.
We have in our audience today a new council member from Malibu, Bruce Silverstein. And I don't know if you know Bruce, but
I do.
Hearing. And he raised the issue of homeless encampments. I'm sure it's more of a Malibu Creek Park issue. So I think we're going to add that to our quiver of
Good.
things that we need to attack. Captain Becerra is going to make some comments on that later.
Oh, good.
But I did want you to know that among the other things, I know Hidden Hills, as you know, has been advocating very strongly for undergrounding of power poles,
Yes.
which is a huge, huge, huge number. We will continue to pursue that on the fire safety front, but Bruce has brought up another very, very important issue because we know that there are fires absolutely that emanate from that situation, and we do have some legal recourse there, and I think we need to pursue it. As I said earlier, Hidden Hills is surrounded by open grassland. I've been through 2 or 3 fires. They move quickly, they're dangerous. Last one, Woolsey and a few of the others, we have fortunately just got swept around, so which has been great. So anyway, good morning.
Yeah. Hey, and how's this? Is the swap meet open? Are you guys still up? Are you going to get shut down now?
It is open, but I'm fearful that we're only weeks away from shutting down.
I am too. I am too. We've sort of.
Thank you for asking, by the way.
Yeah, of course. No, we're snapping back. It's not a good situation right now, and I'm kind of frustrated with all the large leadership infrastructure, whether it's county or state. Just I want to make sure there's a little more precision about all this stuff, but I get that it's a bad situation. One thing I'll just say very briefly, we did have a bill on undergrounding that got stalled in assembly last year. We're bringing that back again to prioritize all undergrounding projects of the PUC based on their public safety value, not based on aesthetic value, to sort of kick everyone out from the line who's in there for aesthetic reasons. But our area is very much a wildfire driven concern or PSPS concern. So that bill is coming back, and it's going to be a top priority within the wildfire working group. And then one other thing I'd say on the mental health and homelessness front is that I'm working actually with John Sharon, who's the Department of Mental Health Director for LA County, to try and figure out some way to enhance the ability to do sort of field psychiatry and even to do conservatorships or some other sort of step down version of a conservatorship where we could bring people who are severely mentally ill, not people who are living in their car because they've been, fallen on hard times, but people who are, suffering through a schizophrenic episode and desperately need to be back on their psychiatric medication and just need like some kind of care, but refuse that care. We think folks like Captain Sarah have been doing way too much of our social work for us, and that all that work has been unfairly put on law enforcement. And so what we'd like to see is, frankly, an army of social workers and field psychiatrists and other people to get out there with the resources we need from law enforcement to make sure they feel safe. I'm very concerned that we're putting them in a place where we have to cut their resources to do that sort of the backup for them. But the idea is that we would empower county mental health to be able to do compelled care. And it's a tough issue from a civil liberties perspective, and the bill's been killed every year by the ACLU. And my dear friend Hannah Beth Jackson in Senate Judiciary Committee has not been a fan of it, but she just retired, and we're going to have a new judiciary chair. And so I think the freedom to die out on the streets is no freedom at all. So we're going to try to find a way to enhance some of that compelled care for the most acute, gravely disabled cases. And then there's obviously a lot of other things we got to do for the 95% of the rest of the population, getting them into housing and trying to find smart programs for safe parking and other issues. But there's a very sort of acute burden slice that I think ends up causing a lot of the concern out there who just desperately need care. So stay tuned. I don't have a bill number for you yet there, but that's among all the other areas, that's very much a top priority.
Thank you, Henry.
Great.
Anything else for Henry or Jeremy before we move on?
Nice intro, Jeremy.
Yeah, really good. Who pays you? Not us enough.
Not enough. Not enough.
There you go, Jeremy. There you go.
Henry, I see we have Dave Peterson on too, and I don't know if you want to mention the award that.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if folks knew that Dave won it's the first inaugural Kathy Cole Award for excellence in his advocacy and leadership, but throughout the entire region. Yeah, I mean, I'm the water chair, so I'm partial to Las Virgenes as the most forward-looking municipal water district in the whole region, but proof's in the pudding now. He's going to have the bronze on the mantle to show it. Or I don't know, if they give you bronze, Dave, I don't know what it is, but it's a big deal. So he was selected amongst all his peers, water managers throughout Southern California, as the most noteworthy and excellent in his leadership. So big congratulations to Dave and his whole team. You
Thanks,
guys
Dave. Congratulations, Dave.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing him now.
He was here. I did see him, but I don't see him now.
Yeah, but we want to double down on his project with Triunfo and really keep helping you guys find less expensive ways to deal with MS4 and all your stormwater permitting than we have in the past, and help our downriver folks like Malibu, help reduce pressure on them, and but do it in a way that's sensitive to the environment in the area. And culturally, we'll just have to advance and get a little more comfortable with recycling, but I think we're there. So.
Okay, anything else for Henry or Jeremy?
Any zingers? No zingers?
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Henry.
Thanks, Kelly. Appreciate
Henry.
it.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Okay.
Thanks, Jeremy. All right, Mr. Dipple.
If, before I do my report, I know that Chief Drew Smith and Megan were trying to get in because they were going to be out of the area. So Megan, do you guys want to jump in now?
Of course.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, Megan.
Chief Smith is on, I think, too.
Oh, there he
Hey,
is.
Drew.
I see both of you.
We're multitasking right now. We have a full plate this morning. Well, good morning, and I'm here on PCH and Carbon Canyon, Megan, and we are happy to see the fog rolling in. We like that after a warm spell. So just to give you an update, your fire family is doing good through these times. We are working through fire season, and just want to let you know that we have a daily fire danger analysis that we do every day. And just remember, as we get into this time of our fire season, which there is a traditional fire season, yes, you can challenge, we have fires year round, but it usually is caused by some weather phenomenon to cause that. So we're in our high risk type of year for the Santa Monica Mountains that gives us the highest potential for large fire growth. So we do a daily fire danger analysis. We look at this and see if we're going to mobilize resources, put them in place, put overhead in place, staff extra bulldozers, helicopters, and ground troops. And we mobilize those resources. And remember that our fires here are of human activity. So we don't have Mother Nature type of fires. So remember, we could have very dangerous weather conditions, but the start has to happen by human interaction, whether it's mechanical failure or a accident, or even, heaven forbid, arson. So that's what we look at daily and what that relative risk is for that large fire growth. We work with our law enforcement partners. I talk to Captain Becerra weekly, if not more than that. We interact. In fact, we have another drill that we're going to be planning on meeting. We have two today together. They'll be looking at some different things. We have one of the Colson aircraft, which is a regional aircraft, has two big propellers on it, carries 3,000 gallons of water. It's going to be dipping out of 69 Bravo and Camp 8 today. We're going to be doing that later this afternoon. And that's stationed at Los Alamitos. It's available to us, and it's about a 14-minute flight time to get to the Santa Monica Mountains. Things to remember if we have a fire, just to remind the group, identify through Megan or find out where the incident command post is. Please bring a representative to the incident command post so we can make sure that we are unified in the message with law enforcement, fire, and the cities, with sending out a unified message to get the correct message to everybody who could be impacted or who needs information. So we really need to look at that so we can give the direct orders on if there's an evacuation order, evacuation warning, or if we're in a shelter in place, and then give that, distribute that information with a unified message. And with that, I know that Captain Becerra will have some more to talk about, but we're in very good communication in our unified front on the public safety endeavor. And so I'll ask Megan if she has anything that she would like to add, and I'll entertain any questions.
Well, that was great. I think you covered everything.
Any questions for either Drew or Megan? All right, back to you, Terry. Thank you, Drew. Thank you, Megan. Appreciate it.
Okay. Let's see, I'd like to highlight my executive director's report. There's 4 items that I'd like to bring to your attention. Number 1, the evacuation plan that we've been trying to get off the ground with between the COG. I know that our public safety partners are working on it already, but as far as the COG's involvement, we're having our first meeting on Thursday, November 19th. It was originally scheduled to be an in-person meeting at the Lost Hill Station. However, yesterday it was decided that it would be a virtual meeting due to the increase in COVID in the area. Let's see. I'm meeting with LA County, their homeless initiative staff this month to discuss a continuation of the grant that is used to fund Gabriel Graham, the COG's outreach coordinator position. As you know, Gabriel serves all 5 cities and has been doing a great job. And we would like to keep his position if that funding is available. And it appears that it's going to be, so that's very positive. With regard to I'd like some direction from the governing board. 2 of the priorities that we set or that you discussed last summer at the July goals and priorities session was the possible retention of a lobbyist. And the other one was a legislative platform. And I began working on a very basic legislative platform and discussed it back in September with the TAC and was planning to bring it to you this month, but I just kind of wanted to get a little bit more direction from the governing board to see if it's something that you want to pursue, if you just want to put it on the back burner for a while. I would say that as I was envisioning, whether it was a very basic, simple, or a more detailed legislative platform, that not only would the governing board review it and finalize it, but then it would go out to all of the COG cities for additional approval to make sure that the COG would be able to act on legislation during the legislative session. But it's obviously the board's call, and so I would just want to see what your thoughts were. If you want me to bring it back in the future, happy to do so either way.
Terry, I'd like to say something. It's Karen. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
We voted on this. Was it last month or the month before on the lobbyist?
We did.
No, I'm sorry. I said that the COG discussed 2 things. One was retaining a lobbyist, which yes, we did not do. The other one was to have a legislative platform that could be used by the COG to take action on legislation next year. If, for example, the League of Cities said, hey, we want you to support this, or we want you to oppose this, and as opposed to our current policy, where the governing board doesn't take a position, it gets referred to the cities until all of the cities support it, then the governing board will take action. And I'm fine with moving forward with that. I just didn't want to spend a lot of time on a legislative platform if we're not going to have a lobbyist, or if we just want to use the legislative platform to take action at a COG meeting on legislation that is pending. So that's what I was trying to say.
Appreciate that. I know we've discussed that if there are issues that the COG is not unanimous in supporting or opposing, that the COG will not put that on its agenda. So I'd like to hear from the other governing board members, but I think there are issues that we all see the same way, but there are some where we do not. So I think we can take those issue by issue.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kelly.
I was just I thought you were finished. I was gonna ask for comments from the other governing board members. Dennis, Alicia, Stuart.
I was gonna concur with everything Karen said. That's how I felt we left it as well.
Right, but
I'm here, Kelly.
Isn't the question, Terry, you're asking us if we want you to continue to create some sort of legislative platform. Is that what you're at? I need a little clarification here.
Yes, that's, okay. And what I also think that Elise is trying to jump in, and I know that she's having difficulty, so I'll defer to Elise for a second. Elise?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Hi, everybody. So as far as the platform goes, I know we decided because we couldn't all agree on a lobbyist, and it would be, too difficult to have a lobbyist going up to Sacramento and saying, it's 3-2 on a vote from the Las Virgenes-COG. But I think that the purpose of having a platform, as I recall when we discussed, would be to see if there was some areas that we all agreed on. For example, last year we did send a letter of, I think it was opposition to a bill because of the very high fire severity zones not being carved out. And perhaps, I don't think I don't think there's a lot in a platform that we would all agree on necessarily, but I wouldn't mind being able to come up with a couple of things like local control. If there's a bill that's going to support local control or go against local control, that we wouldn't have to go through the standard procedure that we have right now, which is bring it up at a COG meeting, then go to all 5 city councils, see how they feel, because by then the bill will have already been amended or maybe already killed or whatever. I don't know if Henry's still on the line, if he has some thoughts on this, but the 2 areas that I think that we all can agree on is the very high fire severity zones and the local control issue. So my view would be to move forward with coming up with something that was very specific, and if there was any other areas that the 5 cities could agree on. Otherwise, if the 5 cities can't agree on it, then I don't think that we want to have that part of the platform. But what I routinely keep hearing this year is that we all have the same feelings about the very high fire severity zone being carved out of the legislation, as well as, retaining local control.
I would,
please.
I'm not sure who's talking. This is Stuart. I completely agree. I think if we could pick 2 issues, and sort of flesh them out a little bit so we get a little more specific, maybe with Terry's help. We go back to our councils, I'm sure I report monthly, I'm sure you all do, and say, we would like free reign, maybe that's too strong a word, but we'd like the ability to push these 2 issues without having to come back to the council. Is the council supportive of us pushing these 2 issues through the COG, which includes writing a letter and pushing along. And if we get all 5 councils to agree that just on those 2 narrow issues we can do that, then I think it's mandatory we do that. I think that's our job.
I I just want to echo what Stuart said. As long as we go back to our individual councils and get their buy-in, then I think we're okay. Because I think that's where we get hung up. That's where we get hung up sometimes. We come up with the issues, but we haven't gone back to our councils.
Buy-in on creating the legislative platform in the COG, or buy-in on the specific issues, or both? Because here's the thing, that the creation of this legislative platform in large part was so we don't have to go through the weeks of going back and forth to our council. Just as Elise said, it's a timing thing. You know, these bills get changed almost daily. And by the time we do all that, we're out of time and out of power to influence our legislatures. So, I mean, that's sort of the point. I guess I'm not really clear on what, you know.
Or I thought Stuart was saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the issues would be up front. Like, we would develop what the issues are and then go back to our councils and just say, these are the issues that we're going to be working on. More in a broad term is how I understood it.
That's kind of how I was just looking at something that might have maybe 3 or 4 bullet points. One might be that the COG valued local control for cities, and if there was any legislation that would override the zoning and planning matters for cities, that would be something that the COG would be against. Something about high fire, flood zones, and things like that. And then that whatever the COG governing board finalized, those 3 or 4 bullet points, then that would go out to each one of the city councils, and the governing board member would bring it up at the city council and say, this is what the COG would like to adopt as a legislative platform, and would we as an individual city be supportive of the COG doing that? And if all 5 cities were unanimous in supporting something, then the COG would be able to be a little bit more nimble when it came to reacting to legislation. But if it,
yeah, that's okay. That was a perfect synthesis, Gary. I'm no longer confused. That's exactly what I think we should do on behalf of Westlake. So thank you. You capsulized that perfectly. I'm in agreement. Anybody else?
Yeah, thank you, Terry, for the clarification. I agree, but I also will just add, I think local control is a universal priority for every governing board in every city. So I don't want to discount that, but I don't think we could assume that there's any elected official that's not interested in local control.
Agreed.
okay, well,
Okay.
I'll work on something, and Kelly, I'll communicate with you and Elise during the interim, since we don't have a governing board meeting until January, and then I'll bring something back at that time.
Thank you, Terry. Appreciate it. Anyway, go ahead.
Thank you, Terry.
The other thing that I would like some direction on is one of the other items that the COG raised during the goal setting was a broadband discussion, and possibly expanding that. What I did that you could see in my report, I have a meeting coming up with South Bay Cities COG to find out about their project and why they did it and how they did it. And then in addition, I had a conversation with Supervisor Kuehl's new board deputy to see if the supervisor might reconsider her opposition, or at least sit on the sidelines during that discussion. In addition, I had a conversation with Spectrum, since they do serve all 5 cities, to have them and ask them if they could review what South Bay Cities COG did and provide a white paper or a comparison as to what South Bay Cities did and what's available to do in the COG region. And then I'll report back that to the city managers at the January TAC meeting. And that concludes my report. Sorry it was so long.
No, it wasn't. Okay, so any questions for Terry before we proceed? Thank you. Okay, then item C, which is the SCAG's Regional Climate Adaptation Framework. Kimberly Clark. I see you there.
Hi.
Go ahead, Terry. Go ahead.
Okay, Kimberly's online, and I'm going to attempt to share my screen so
Thanks, Terry.
so they can make their report. Let's see. This could be very embarrassing or not. Let's see.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
Photo.
Okay,
That looks like where Elise is.
That is. There's Elise. Let's look for Elise.
I'm glad it wasn't anything too embarrassing.
Yeah.
Okay,
A+.
I will.
A+.
Okay, Kimberly, I'll let you get started. Sorry for the noise in the background.
If everybody could mute while Kimberly's talking, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Terry, if you wouldn't mind projecting real quick, and then as we go through, we'll just ask you to.
If I wouldn't mind doing what?
So if you click the.
Oh, the next one? Or,
So there's the little thing at the bottom of the screen where you can actually like project the slides and it'll fill up the whole screen. So you see like that little slider of percentage, right?
oh,
Right
see.
next to that on the left.
It is filling the whole screen.
Yeah. One more over, one more to the right, one more to the right. Yes, that guy. Perfect,
Okay.
thank you. And then as we go through, if you don't mind just pressing the right
No,
arrow
just-
key.
Just let me know.
Thank you so much. There's always going to be Zoom issues and our new challenges, right, that we face in quarantine.
Uncharted
but
territory.
yeah, I really appreciate you working with us on that, Terry. And good morning, honorable members of the governing board. Thank you for having us. My name is Kimberly Clark. I'm the Resource Conservation and Resilient Communities Program Manager with SCAG. And today I'll be giving an overview of SCAG's Climate Adaptation Framework, along with our consultants, David Von Stroh and Jeff Caden. We'll cover the framework's regional focus on adaptation planning for Southern California, which complements the state's work, as well as other adaptation planning efforts in the Southern California region underway through local initiatives. Next slide, please. Thank you so much. So the framework kicked off in February 2019 and is funded through Caltrans SB $1 and focuses on tools and resources for local jurisdictions across Southern California. Our aim with this effort is to help local jurisdictions plan for climate vulnerabilities in their communities and overall reduce hazard and plan for our changing future. So the framework includes tools and resources, outreach and communication strategies for engaging with residents on the challenges of climate change, planning guidance and model policy language, vulnerability mapping and assessment tools, transportation and land use scenarios and modeling, finance and funding guidance, and also project ideas and tracking tools. One of our primary resources from the framework is our SoCal Climate Adaptation Planning Guide, which was just recently published on SCAG's website. To speak on that and other aspects of the Climate Adaptation Framework, I'll go ahead and pass to David.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah, so I'm David Von Stroh with Cambridge Systematics. So I'm the project manager for the consultant team, and Jeff Caton from ESA, who's a key part of our team as well, is here. And if you go to the next slide, please, Terry. This is just, and Jeff will say more about this diagram of the 4 phases of our planning guide. But just as kind of an introduction here, we kind of have a list of various tools that we've developed, and this isn't even exhaustive of everything that we've done in this, but this kind of gives you a taste of various tools that and resources that are for the sake of local jurisdictions to help in your planning efforts to address climate change and climate adaptation. From kind of the data and analysis, the more technical front, as well as on the policy front and language for your documents and so on. So we'll introduce some of these in the rest of our presentation. So I'll hand it to the next slide and let Jeff introduce the guide.
Oh, go back one. There you go. Yeah, thanks, David. So yes, tying this framework of tools together is the Southern California Adaptation Planning Guide, which outlines the planning process that cities and counties can follow to prepare for the impacts of climate change. And it follows the same phases and steps as the recently adopted state adaptation planning guide. We didn't want to introduce new phases and steps. We know that that's a very good document. We want to remain consistent with that. And then similar to the state planning guide, the Southern California, or the SoCal APG as we call it, integrates outreach and engagement activities throughout the 4 phases that you see depicted here in the graphic, which represent the 4 phases of that adaptation planning process. And it also incorporates the guidance from other regional, state, and federal guides and tools, and really emphasizes the tools and resources that are readily available to help local jurisdictions implement each key step. So next slide, please. This is a sample graphic from the chapter on phase 2, which is about vulnerability assessment. And again, these are the same 4 steps that you'll find in the state guide, but customized for the SCAG region. Each step identifies key materials. Oops, getting a lot of noise in the background.
Stuart, can you mute Stuart, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Each step identifies key materials or work products that can be prepared, and it provides key examples that help to illustrate how jurisdictions within the SCAG region have implemented that step. Each step also includes a section with links to tools and resources that help a city or county work through the step. You can move on to the next slide, please. So the guide covers the full range of impacts, of climate change impacts that are expected in the SCAG region, and these include extreme heat, sea level rise, wildfire, and the rest of the impacts you see listed here. It's worth noting that the SCAG region is heating up faster than the rest of the state, as indicated by this graphic. And a recent study even indicated that the region is heating up faster than any place in the United States currently. And of course, that has implications for wildfires, as has been discussed here today, and public health and demands for energy and water. Next slide, please. I think I'll be passing on to David on the next slide.
Yeah, so on this next slide, this begins some of our vulnerability assessment and mapping of the risks. So we took layers of the wildfire risk at various levels, as well as sea level rise, extreme heat, and flood risk, and even created scenarios for how people might, evacuate and relocate in the future, and how that impacts travel across the region. But this screen, just trying to really illustrate the widespread impacts of who's impacted, and we have tools that allow jurisdictions then to dive into, okay, how much population, households, employment in my jurisdiction are impacted by various risks. So you go on to the next slide. And then we also took location data from cell phone apps to see how did people actually move about and evacuate during historical wildfire events in recent years. So this one is showing from the Woolsey fire, just how much there was of a difference, before versus during of the activity within that perimeter and the 10-mile buffer round, and kind of where people evacuated to. You can see on that screen. And then if you go to the next slide, we tried to get a sense of that pattern change of like really seeing that signal of when the fire started, how people change their behavior, and then it was just slowly brought back, as it was put out, kind of coming back to equilibrium. But yet there's still many people who weren't able to move back in afterwards, and you can see that in the number of activities from these cell phone devices that we're seeing in that data. And that really kind of ground truths some of our planning of, okay, how are people permanently impacted by some of these fire events? So you can go on to the next slide. So this shows some of what we did. This is just from heat, looking at, okay, how did people, where would people move from and move to? And then if you move to the next slide, we put this through the travel demand model to see what was the changes to trip making and BMT and congestion and delay across the region. And we kind of mapped out that volumes on different roadways and so on. So that was, really diving into each of these issues for those 4 key things of sea level rise, wildfire risk, extreme heat, especially health impacts from extreme heat, as well as flood risk. So you can go on to the next slide, please. And then from that, we really look at adaptation strategies. So, Jeff and his team developed a long spreadsheet that can be filtered through looking at different hazard types, as well as the asset types you might be wanting to protect, and diving into various strategies and actions that are available as kind of a menu for that. You can go on to the next slide to mitigate some of these impacts, right? It's, looking at sea level rise, this might be reinforcing the coastline, whether it's, cliffside, or whether it's even just in terms of extreme heat, needing to increase the tree canopy to address the urban heat island effect, or raising up structures so that they're not so that they're more resilient to potential flooding. And then the various strategies that your state senator was talking about earlier in terms of wildfire and addressing that. So you go on to the next slide. So then, as we did these scenarios, we, you can go on the next slide here. We have a table of some, kind of like the key strategies. So we had kind of go back one. We developed scenarios of kind of business as usual if nothing changes, and then also kind of a mitigation scenario as well, where we applied some of these in some of the worst impacted zones and tried to see how that would impact conditions in the future as well. So that's just a taste of that. And then you can move on to the next slide, and I'll hand it back to Jeff to talk about some of the model policy language.
Thanks. Yeah, so building from those strategies, the framework includes model policies that are intended for use in general plan updates. They're organized by general plan element and climate hazard type. They address these 4 elements of the general plan shown here that are concerned with preparing and adapting to the impacts of climate change. And so an example provided here, you can see land use policies addressing 4 different aspects of extreme heat that affect livestock, the built environment, public health, and active transportation. Next slide, please. Just want to get through this 3 on the project checklist, so in addition to the framework's tools for long-term planning, we've included these project checklists that are designed to help local agencies with their project review process by taking climate change hazards into consideration. And they're primarily a qualitative assessment tool, but they use maps and various metrics to identify and evaluate the project's vulnerability to various climate change hazards. They're designed as templates that can be customized by a local agency so that you can apply your own priorities and guidelines and requirements for how a project should consider climate change hazards in its design. They're broadly applicable to residential commercial projects as well as infrastructure projects. And the process guides you through 2 steps. First step is a screening threshold for each of the 6 hazards you see here. So using simple yes, no questions with links to maps or information resources that help you answer that question. And then if the screening question is answered yes, then it directs you to a detailed checklist for the hazard of concern. So next slide, please. This is an example detailed checklist for extreme heat, but the same approach is used for all hazards. It guides you through questions on the project's exposure and sensitivity to the hazard, and then points to various resources for making that assessment and for assessing the potential consequences. You can go to the next slide, please. And then the last component of the checklist guides the project applicant through a series of questions and considerations regarding the project's adaptive capacity, or in other words, its resilience and adaptability to future conditions. And these templates are really meant to be customized by a local jurisdiction. The framework, I'm sorry, the strategy matrix that David introduced is earlier is really a good tool for customizing these, where you can input those strategies into this last component here to increase resilience of individual projects. So I'll pass it back to David, I believe, for the next slide.
Yes. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, so I just have one more slide here before I pass it back to Kim. She has some things to say as well. And so one tool that we also developed is just, kind of almost like a survey tool that will be passed out to all the jurisdictions in the SCAG region to return to SCAG. And it's a project tracking tool. So this allows you to, first of all, see, what are some of the impacted demographics in your city, in your county, when you look at these different hazards. And then if you're planning different projects or considering them, or even beginning to implement them and seek funding for them, construct them, you can put in that information and say, some of your projections of how much scale of impact there are on that, and input, whether it's proposed, being planned, under construction, the level of funding, whether it's unfunded, seeking, partially funded, and so on. And put in key information about your project managers for that, and the contact info. So that way, that's something that SCAG can really see at a regional level and summarize at a county level what's going on in terms of climate adaptation. So yeah, with that, I'll pass it back to Kim, and she has some more slides, and then we can take questions.
Great. Thanks, David. So I wanted to let everyone know, this is a good resource to maybe refer to your staff if you're wanting to hear more about the SoCal Climate Adaptation Framework. We have a webinar on December 8th from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And actually directly accompanying that webinar from 11 a.m. to noon on December 8th is going to be a demonstration of our housing site assistance tool, which will be using some of the layers from our climate adaptation framework to help inform site selection for housing element updates. Next slide, please. Speaking of housing elements and the need to address challenges related to housing within local jurisdictions, I wanted to just quickly advertise our latest grant opportunity called our Housing and Sustainable Development Call for Projects. There's a workshop on December 2nd. The call for applications actually just opened with approval from our regional council, and the deadline is January 15th. So in between that time, SCAG is selecting proposals on these following project types. Next slide, please. On advancing accessory dwelling unit implementation, housing sustainability districts, workforce housing opportunity zones, and housing supportive tax and commit financing districts like EIFDs and CREAs. And then the third project category is objective development standards for streamlined housing, pro-housing designation program, and parking innovations. So with that, thank you again for giving us this time to address the board. And we're very happy to take any questions if there's still time allowed.
Anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you. I appreciate your time, everybody. Thanks for the presentation. Back to you, Terry.
You're muted, Terry.
I know that Captain Becerra wanted to make some comments because he also has to go to the same meeting that Chief Smith is attending.
Yes, hello. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Everybody hear me? Perfect. So I'll just jump right in. Crime stats, crime in our division is completely low. It looks like the crime in Central Division, South, like the inner city stations are all rising. I don't know if this next posture by the governor is going to shut that down again. We are seeing an increase to COVID, including the station. Knock on wood, we were lucky to only have one person that was infected with COVID in the last 9 months. And now in the last 10 days, we've had 10. So unfortunately, one of the individuals worked the desk. And if anybody's been here at the station, the dispatch area is very confined. So it just ripped completely through our dispatch. But we're dealing with it. Yes, and to talk about with Drew, I meet with Drew, weekly. We speak almost daily. Today we have 2 drills alone, one in 20 minutes and one in 6 hours. just to make sure our teams are talking in preparation for this fire season and disaster and so forth. And yes, it looks like the OEM meeting on Thursday is going to be virtual, but we're talking with Kevin McGowan, and he and I speak at least once a month, meet literally once a month to make sure we're going over this kind of stuff. Martin versus Boise. Bruce, nice to meet you. I hope to meet you in person soon. And I'll get right to the point, is that the laws in Malibu don't exist for us to enforce Martin versus Boise, in the sense that as our county council interprets this, and it's filtered to the sheriff's department, is that if there are no alternatives to incarceration, such as a shelter, then we can't enforce the law. And so I'm interested to hear your side of version, perhaps offline, or sometime today we could talk about that, and I can perhaps get you with our homeless expert, Lieutenant Jeff Diedrich, who really knows the law, who enforces this county-wide. And we met virtual with your city leadership about a month ago or so. Prior to that meeting, I spoke to our counterparts at Santa Monica PD. And to put it in perspective, Santa Monica, a city a fraction of the size of Malibu, has 9 shelters. Malibu has none. So I know myself, Lieutenant Braden, have pounded the desk saying, hey, give us, basically unhandcuff us so we can, enforce some of the laws, and simply put, it's not illegal to be homeless. It's not against the law to be a transient. So we can't just simply arrest them for vagrancy if there's nothing else we can do. I will send you a report, because our host lieutenant, conducted an assessment, and mind you, unprovoked and on his own, he noted the lenient laws with regards to parking. And since you're a resident of Malibu, you probably drive down PCH and see Corral Beach in disgust. There's 26 RVs parked there as we speak. Right now, there's there, and it's like that all the time. Trust me when I say I can't stand looking at that. My deputies can't stand it, but we are handcuffed because there are no signs there. Nothing that says you can't park there. Nothing. So the only thing we can enforce is the 72-hour rule. So what does that do? We put a red tag on the car. All they do is move it. They just move it. It's a game of whack-a-mole. And I know Lieutenant Braden has talked to the city leadership with regards to having an alternative parking site. And I know the city leadership wants that. I know that. I've talked to Mikey Pearson, Riva. We all want something like that. So perhaps you can help us push this through. Well, what the alternative parking site does, it says if we can have if we could take an RV and put it in an alternative parking site between midnight and 6 a.m., they can't park anywhere else in the city. So deputies can tell. And right now we can't tell. So that's where we're at, Bruce. But I would like to meet with you and discuss these details in person, or however you would like to discuss. But I want you to meet our host team. That's another thing, is that when I talked to our Santa Monica counterpart, he's got a whole host team. I mean, just for Santa Monica, and that station's a fraction of the size of this station alone. And Revis wanted to have her own host team for Malibu, which is a fantastic idea, because our budget cuts have ravished our county's host team. So we have a county host team now, Lieutenant Diedrich, and he's got 4 people that deal with the entire county, all 28 stations. 4 people to deal with that. It's impossible, I think. So I thought it was a great idea, Reva. So let's fund our own host team, people that are just dedicated to Malibu. So that way we can start that process. These are long-term goals. I think they're fantastic ideas, great goals. And part of this plan would we need an enforcement element, which would be the laws. Alternative parking sites, a shelter, perhaps. You're right, not a popular thing to say to the residents of Malibu, but that's one way we can deal with that. And with that, Bruce, I will send you my email and phone, and we can communicate. We can carry on this discussion. But before I leave, any thoughts, ideas, questions from anybody?
Anybody have questions for Captain Becerra before we move on?
I have one quick question, Stuart. On Saturday, the freeway was shut down for a while. There was a lot of police activity. I called the station and there was no answer. So I assume you were busy. Do you know what was going on?
I know it was a shooting, but it wasn't a shooting that involved this station. It involved, I think, our LAPD counterparts. Oh, that's another thing I wanted to say with regards to, sorry, Stuart. So to the shooting, no, that's it. That's all I got to say. But 10 days ago, we met with all our counterparts, all like 9 LAPD stations, and basically a command staff meeting of the East. They call it East Valley because, you know, even though we're on the west end of LA County, it's all the east end of the Ventura County. We all meet to discuss. So it's great. It's a partnership there, so we can meet all our counterparts. But there was a shooting, LAPD, but that's all I have for now.
Thank you.
Nothing else? Questions? Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye, Chuck. Thank you. Appreciate it. Sorry for something in my eye. Okay, Terry, back to you for our member city reports. Yes?
You can just call on the city managers individually.
All right, let's start with the Agoura Hills. Nathan, are you there?
Yes, good morning. Thank you.
Good morning.
Just real quickly, our COVID update. Before I get to that, just want to announce congratulations to Alicia Buckley Weber and Linda Northrup for their re-election. We had a good election day. Seemed like everything worked out, even the drop-off ballot. So the county did a good job working with us. We continue to work altering schedules, half staff on and half staff working remotely. We're working on a holiday message for Thanksgiving, and obviously with the recommended travel restrictions and whatnot, we're putting out further information to the public. We, like everybody else, will be doing our reorganization this year virtually in December. And so it'll be slightly different, but I think every city is dealing with that and approaching that. And then with our business community, we're working with the Greater Conejo Chamber of Commerce and our tourism improvement district in regards to hotels and businesses, as it looks like there's potential for further restrictions. So we're, again, looking for different options to help all of our restaurants and local retailers and how to deal with it. And, you know, again, just dealing with the preparation for the potential of additional restrictions that we all may have. So let's keep our fingers crossed we don't get there. But that will conclude my report for Agoura Hills.
Thank you, Nathan. Rob, you were here. I saw. Oh, there you are. Okay, I see you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Honig. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, it's very similar to what Nathan reported out of Agoura Hills. I would say that there's definitely COVID fatigue, you know, in our community, in our business community, and even at City Hall. While at the same time, we're all pretty troubled by the increase in cases. We're in for a really tough couple of months, while everybody's at the same time just very tired of this whole journey. So we're working hard on sort of the messaging to stay vigilant and continue to not gather, wear your mask, all of that messaging in various different ways. We're going to try to do something fun. We're going to try and do a drive-in movie sometime over the winter break. So we're working on that, which is going to be fun. We have just a couple more council meetings for the year. The next one is December 2nd, and it's sort of a ceremonial meeting where we thank the outgoing mayor and select a new mayor and mayor pro tem. So if anyone's interested, you can join us for that. But that's all I have to report at this time. And maybe Ned or Kelly, if you have anything to add, go ahead.
I don't. Not that I'm counting down the weeks that I have left being the mayor. So just saying. I do not have anything to add. Carrie, Hidden Hills.
Hey, good morning. Not a lot, much of the same. COVID fatigue for sure. Obviously, Hidden Hills is blessed right now to not have some of the same business and retail issues that the rest of you have. We do have a new council member coming on board. Brett Katz, who's currently our mayor, was not reelected. Aniko Gold was elected along with incumbent Steve Friedland. So hopefully you guys will get a chance to meet Aniko in the near future. Eagerly awaiting all of your messaging on Thanksgiving. I'd love to beg, borrow, and steal from the rest of you. Stuart and Laura, if you're there, did you have anything you wanted to add to this?
No, I think that we're all the cities seem to be in the same boat, same issues, same frustrations, same sadness over Thanksgiving. So that's all I have to say.
And I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you. Malibu. Hi, Reva.
Good morning, everyone. So nice to see you all. I never thought I'd say I miss our 8:30 COG meetings, but I do in person. So not a whole lot other than what the other city managers have reported. You know, we're still at a very limited staff at City Hall, particularly to keep our rebuilding efforts going. I think without that, we would probably just have our inspectors and whatnot there, but obviously trying to continue to provide those services to our residents. We have about 250 plus homes that have been approved through planning. So trying to keep those being moving along to get people back home. And in terms of some of the things that we've done, we did partner with the Malibu Film Society to do a 2-night drive-in movie over Halloween, and that was very successful. So looking to try and partner again with them over the Christmas period to do that. So if any of you have the opportunity to provide a drive-in movie, we found it to be very welcoming welcomed by the community. And other than that, just keeping an eye on those county numbers, and certainly going to message them out, and happy to partner with any of the other cities if you want to do joint messaging. And that is all, unless Karen has anything to add. Thank you.
Thanks, Reva. Not much. I do want to thank Chuck for reiterating things that most of us have already been learning about our homeless population, our RVs on the highway, and school buses and other things that we've got, and how we can enforce Martin versus Boise should we decide as a community to make the provisions that he outlined. So there was no news there, but I think it's just good for everybody to get reminded of what we're up against and the hard decisions that we all have to make. And Reva didn't mention, but for all of you who know Christy Hogan, our city attorney, she has announced her retirement next month, but most of you probably know she's been phasing out for some time now, and turning more work over to our, up until now, assistant city attorney, Trevor Rusin. So just so that you all know, that's what's happening on our front. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And last, Alicia.
Well, first I want to,
yes, I'm sorry, you're new city manager.
Yes, well, I want to introduce everyone to our new interim city manager, Don Penman, who we're thrilled to have on board, and I know you will all enjoy working with him. I'll let him, I'll pass it over to him in a second, but I'll just give a quick update on Calabasas. Still dealing with house parties. No matter how hard we try, people just don't seem to care. The sheriff has been doing a good job assisting us on that front, but it's also just the smaller backyard gatherings, unmasked, posting on social media, just really no regard for the current situation. We had a really big increase in the last 2 weeks in terms of our cases in the community. So it's something we're keeping an eye on. Same things everyone talked about, trying to help our businesses. The chamber, they're trying to figure out like a campaign for shop local over the holidays and getting all of the businesses to help set up merchandise outside for people that are still not comfortable going inside, just to make it easier to shop local. We're going to be doing a holiday event, a drive-through event for the Christmas Hanukkah holidays. And I think everything else is the same. We're still interviewing for city managers, and I'm going to turn it over to Don so he could introduce himself and tell you a little bit about him.
Well, thank you, Alicia. Good morning, everyone. It's my second day on the job, so I don't really have anything to add to what Alicia already said. A special hello to Terry. Terry and I go back a few years I worked in a number of cities in the San Gabriel Valley and got to know Terry really well when he was the mayor of San Dimas, I believe. Is that correct, Terry? I'm filling in. Ray Taylor's contract ended this month, so I'll just be helping the city out through this transition for hopefully a short period of time while they complete the recruitment for the permanent city manager. And not a lot to tell about my background other than I retired out of the city as a city manager in the city of Arcadia. And then since then I've done 6 other interim city manager assignments. The last one was the city of Ventura. And so I'm looking forward to working with all of you over whatever period of time I'll be here and help in any way I can. And thank you very much for giving me this chance.
So if everyone can update the city manager contact for Calabasas for Don Penman, that would be great, just so he doesn't miss anything that city managers need to get.
Don, would you mind putting your email in the chat so we all have it?
Okay. Well, I'll send it all over to you. Okay.
Here,
so
I'm gonna put it in the chat.
I will readily admit if the gray hair doesn't convince you enough, I'm pretty old school. So
I'm gonna do it.
We'll take care of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So Terry, we are on action items now.
Good. Let's see. So the first action item that item 6A that I'd like to bring to your attention and highlight is the SCAG Regional Early Action Planning Grant that I discussed at the last COG meeting. And the governing board, while Illece and Kelly had some familiarity with it, the rest of the governing board did not, and I apologize for that. It was recommended to go back to the city and voted to approve going forward with, which is the Regional Early Action Planning Grant. As I discussed, grant funding like Measure M or Measure R we between the cities. Unfortunately, we cannot do that with your city planners and subsequently would. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, now you're better. Okay. Yeah. So maybe repeat just the end of that. I'm not sure what everybody heard. So
okay, so the proposal would be to use the grant fund or the grant funding and hire a consultant who would analyze the underutilized office, light industrial and commercial areas in the COG or other suitable locations for workforce housing, and to develop an overlay map that could be adopted by each city. It doesn't have to be adopted by a city. So there's no hammer if it's not. It would, but that would be the final product. In addition, there would be a public engagement or workshop component that would be a series of workshops in the COG virtual workshops in the COG cities to discuss what RHNA is, how RHNA impacts the communities, that it's not necessarily the communities wanting to build more housing because they want to. It's because there's a requirement by the state with the regional housing needs assessment to build more housing in the various communities. And so we thought that it would be important to have an outreach and public education component that talked about the RHNA process and how cities are dealing with the RHNA process. So with all of that said, it's anticipated that the COG would have a consultant on board by the end of January, next January 21, and that the project would be completed by the end of September. And there would be no cost to the COG cities or to the COG. In fact, pursuant to SCAG's policy, the COG is allowed a 5% administrative fee for managing the consultant, which amounts to $5,000 that the COG would be reimbursed for my time in coordinating this. But other than that, the rest of the funds would go to the consultant that would be preparing this overlay map and doing public workshops. In addition, it would also look at the fire zone and the flood zone areas as far as and how RHNA impacts and how those areas impact the city's ability for new construction. And with that, I would recommend that the governing board approve the replanning grant and authorize me to sign the MOU with SCAG and prepare the RFP to hire a consultant.
I think Elise, are you out there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. So this is an overlay that I'm not quite sure, you cut out a bit, or maybe I didn't hear it, but it's an overlay of how cities would do what with industrial properties?
No, it would be the final product would be a workforce housing overlay. And in order to prepare the overlay that would indicate areas that
experience of a lifetime. In the face of this
Oops, I lost you.
It would identify during the process, it would identify underutilized commercial, office, or light industrial areas in addition to other properties. But it would look at some areas. Obviously it would be in coordination with each one of the cities to determine if there were possible locations that could be identified and that would be on the workforce overlay that is the final project. Again, it would not have to be adopted by each individual city, so there's no hammer involved, but it could be adopted by each individual city.
Well, you know, I love Dennis's comments on that as well, but I want to go to our full council to discuss this before I would be supporting something like that, because we have our own, like the Agoura Village specific plan, and I don't want something to be out. My initial thought is I don't want something to be out there that perhaps conflicts, even if we don't adopt it, but it's out there that it conflicts with our own Agoura Village specific plan, which we are in the process of looking at updating anyways. So, you know, that would be my thought, is that I would want to take this to our full council first before I would feel comfortable supporting that.
I would agree with Elise going to our council, but I think it might be a worthy opportunity to allow us to have another look. The Agoura Village specific plan has been in place for like 10, 12 years, and nothing has much been done on it. So if we could used the information gleaned by a consultant. I think initially I feel comfortable with it, but again, I agree with Elise, having a discussion at the council level.
Well, two things. Number one, it's time sensitive. The application has to be submitted in 2 weeks. Secondly, though, if I could provide some reassurance, Elise, and to the other governing board members, this is not going to be something that's done, you know, in a vacuum. The process is going to involve each one of your cities, and so nothing is going to end up in the final product without your city staff and city council seeing this several times over the course of several months. So it's not like there's going to be something done secretly and then suddenly it's just going to be sprung on the cities with some map that they're not familiar with or not reporting. In addition, as I said, whatever the COG product may be at the end, it's not something that's required to be adopted by each city. It's a planning document. It's not an implementation document.
So
yeah, if I can be so bold, if I can just make, first of all, I thought that we talked at the last meeting about putting together something that dealt with the high fire or very high fire severity zones and some sort of overlay or something, a report on that we could take to our legislators. If the board doesn't want to do that, fair enough, but I guess, you know, this catches me off guard a bit. And I'm reluctant to have a COG document out there that there's been a hired consultant that even if our council says, no, this conflicts with our Agoura Village specific plan, I'm a little leery of having something out there that we're rejecting because it, you know, the region is accepting it, but we're rejecting because it's not consistent with the Agoura Village specific plan. So I'm not sure of the purpose of this planning document, especially if it gets all worked out by a consultant and then we all reject it, or some of us reject it and some of us don't. But, you know, that's my thought is I know that it's time sensitive. I don't know. I'm not mayor for much longer. I don't know if we're going to have a special meeting about it. But
if I could, Elise, it would also include the fire and flood zone overlay that we discussed. The issue with that is that according to SCAG and the State Housing and Community Development, just spending this kind of money on a fire zone map is not something that it would lead to housing production, which is what SCAG and the state are promoting, because the cities have to meet their RHNA numbers. So what, while it would include that, as we previously discussed, that would not be the main deliverable. That would be part of the main deliverable, but that would not be the main deliverable in the project. I mean, if the government...
I see what you're saying, and I'd like to hear from the other board members, but just speaking for the city of Agoura Hills, you know, we've appealed our RHNA numbers, and we already, and you know, we're working on our housing element, and we have the Agoura Village specific plan. So I don't know that this is a great expenditure on our behalf.
But Terry, if I might, along with backing up with Alicia, if we went through with this and this is completed by the end of September, then each city could use it or not use it. It would be up to them to take the final document and decide how they want to use it or implement it or not. So
right.
it's a choice at that time, and it wouldn't cost any city any money to do this.
it wouldn't cost any city any money. It would all be paid for by the COG. I would be overseeing the project along with a planning representative from each one of your cities. I would report monthly to the TAC and to the governing board on the status on how each city is engaged. Nothing would be included in that final map that would not have the blessing of each one of the cities. And even then, you wouldn't have to adopt it at the end. And so, Elise,
that's fair. Thank you.
What I would say is, trust me on this one. And I think that at the end, there would be something that the cities could adopt or not. It's not, again, it's not something that has to be implemented.
Okay. All right. I'm fine with this, Terry.
Anybody else have comments for Terry on this? Alicia, Stuart, Laura?
I do.
And
I'm so sorry, but Terry, I don't completely understand why we would do this, like what the benefit is. And I know the cities aren't paying, but it's still money being spent.
And I completely understand that. And I'm not just in a previous COG, in the early eras of the COG, there was a feeling by a couple of, well, one especially, board member, that the COG should go after every grant that SCAG had.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up with these planning documents that took a lot of time and didn't really create anything.
I know, I guess I just am, to pay for a study that the cities, like the examples Elise used about the Agoura specific plan, we have those in our community. We're working on different annexations. I mean, I just don't want to pay for another study that is just going to sit on a shelf. That I just don't understand really what this is.
Okay, and I'm not trying to swim upstream here. If the governing board doesn't want to do it, that's fine.
Or I think I just need to understand. I know we talk, like, what would the purpose of it be? Would it just be another study?
No, originally what I was hoping to do with the money, maybe not all of the money, but with the money, the project that I was proposing was to do a series of workshops. And I was trying to look at it from an elected official standpoint. I know that when development occurs in a city, there tends to be a lot of pushback from the community about new housing or development in certain areas that are more sensitive. And the flip side is that the state has the regional housing needs assessment that gets allocated to each one of the cities, and the cities have to achieve or attempt to achieve their RHNA numbers. And so what I was hoping with part of this project would be the workshops that would be done in every city, along with videos or other things that the cities could post on their website that would explain what the RHNA process is, what the numbers are for each one of the cities, how the cities are attempting to deal with that, and just to inform the public that it's not the cities that are deciding that they need to add 50 or 100 or 200 additional homes over the next 5-year cycle of RHNA, that it's something that the state is requiring and mandating, that it's getting pushed down to the local communities. And I realize that some cities are appealing their RHNA numbers, which I think makes a lot of sense for cities that, but this would be outreach, it would be the overlay, and it would be analyzing the fire zones and the flood zone areas.
I think a lot of times, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I just think a lot of times these studies get done and they're too technical. So then when a workshop's done with the residents, it's not in a user-friendly format. So I don't know what format this would be. I think the concept of explaining RENA and how it came to be, but we've done a lot of that in-house. So, I mean, I'm interested to hearing from the other governing board. I appreciate you clarifying it to me, but we've been doing a lot of that through our own staff, but I'm interested what the others have to say as well.
Hidden Hills?
Yeah, as a great man once told me, you got to know how to count, Terry. I think you're going down for the count on this one. We need, as always, to get 100% support. I love the idea of educating the community who will not and do not want to understand the RENA situation. It's just, I'm not sure this is going to change anybody's mind. The other thing is for the other cities, not so much Hidden Hills, is we're pretty much just about completely built out. I could see this running counter to established norms in other cities as well. And on a third note, is my audio any better? I've been fiddling with things.
Yes.
Everybody here? Okay?
Yes.
No, not better. You're still crackly and far away, Stuart.
Okay.
I can hear him. Laura?
I'm changing cameras and everything else, but no good. So anyway, I think Laura had some comments you wanted to make.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of new at the RENA thing. The only piece of information I have to add that might be helpful is I do notice in my Cali statewide council member group, they have, the last 5 Sundays have all been RENA workshops. I have not, unfortunately, attended any of them except the first one. But there's a tremendous amount of new conversation going on about RENA and coordination with cities in how they're appealing to ensure that cities who don't appeal don't get saddled with the numbers of the cities that do appeal. And several studies have come out that have shown a miscalculation in the way our RENA numbers were calculated. And that has become a big topic. The league is aware of it. It's not some fringe group, but based on this double counting of numbers, lots of cities are approaching this in a slightly different way than they had previously. And so I think there's value here. I'm still not exactly sure, and maybe Terry, you could give it another go. I'm not exactly sure what our constituents would garner, because I think this is very nuanced and sophisticated, what's going on right now in this particular world. But I do think that our COG, especially with no cost to us, could benefit from an expert who is gathering all of this information and is familiar with it, assuming this person would be so, based on what I've been exposed to. And what some of the other cities I know have been exposed to that we are not covering in our region. So I think there's not a lot of downside, but maybe it needs to be tweaked a little bit in terms of the goal. I don't know, Terry, maybe you could talk about some of the things that this person could do beyond a paper and beyond workshops for our residents. I'm hoping it would be more informative for our cities.
Maybe Terry, did you want to talk about that now? I mean, we're really pushing the time situation here.
I'll circle back.
Okay, I didn't hear from Malibu though. I'm sorry, I skipped over Malibu or haven't gotten to them yet. Did you have any comments, Malibu?
I agree, particularly with the lease. And Terry, I want you to know I appreciate the effort you put into this, but I would not support this right now.
So, okay, so I mean, if we forego it, we forego it, you know, like, because you said, Terry, that the deadline to apply is in 2 weeks, right? Which we can't have another meeting about this unless we have an emergency meeting.
Right.
Is that the case?
Right.
Okay, so where are we here? I have Agoura is a no, Malibu is a no, Hidden Hills is a yes.
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't, I can appreciate everybody's input, and, you know, I think that really to go forward, I wouldn't want to go forward on like a 3-2 vote. You know, if there's reservations, then I think it's just best to scrap it.
Okay, then I would, from Westlake's point of view, I would defer to your advice then, Terry. I know it's, you know, our COG doesn't normally do things that are not unanimous, so, okay. Thank you. And then that brings us to action item B.
Well, hopefully this will be unanimous and quick. The COG has had for the past 5 years a MOU with Metro for to provide administrative support for our Metro board member, Ara Najarian. The consultant that is his board deputy is Maureen Micheline, who used to work at Metro. And this arrangement began after she retired from Metro. It's basically the same as it was last year. There's no cost of living increase provided. It's so nothing will change from that standpoint. And I would recommend the governing board approve the MOU with Metro and an extension of Maureen's contract, which is allowed for 1 year.
Do we need to do an actual motion?
Yes.
Roll call on this, Terry? Okay. So I need a motion to approve the contract and extension, please, from a governing board member with a second to proceed.
So moved, Elise Buckley Weber.
Okay, sorry, it's Karen. I'll second.
Roll call, please. Agoura Hills.
Aye.
Westlake, aye. Hidden Hills.
Aye.
Malibu.
Aye.
Calabasas.
Aye.
Hey, motion passes. So that brings us to I'm on League of City report. Am I in the right area, Terry? I believe that's where
Yes,
we are
you
now.
are.
Thank you. Jeff, are you out there? There you are. I see you. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? My box didn't light up when I'm talking.
Yes.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. I know it's been a long meeting. I sent an email on Thursday around noon of last week that has much of this. In fact, I'm probably going to resend a similar email this afternoon. We have a league membership survey that is out there right now. The deadline to complete that is on the 19th. That is what I hope many of you will go to sort of give your input about what the league should focus on over the coming year. That it should take maybe 5 minutes to complete. That way you can add your 2 cents about where we should go specific to housing and all the other issues we're working on. We're also having a legislative briefing webinar about all the legislative session bills that got out and were signed by the governor, talking about the new laws that cities may have to come to terms with in 2021. That's on the 19th at 10 a.m. for about 2 hours. So that should be another good one. We also at noon today have a Mayors and Council Members Department webinar all about economic development. That is sort of a free-flowing discussion for about an hour about how you can sort of spur your economy along in the era of COVID. We are also, I'm working with many folks from VisCOG on presidential appointments to our policy committees. I know we had Kelly that received an appointment from the Women's Caucus, and I'm working with several other council members. But if you are interested in joining a policy committee, that deadline is December the 4th, and those just opened up for applications yesterday. So that's another thing we can work on together if you're interested. And then our new mayors and council members academy, I've already been messaging back and forth with Mr. Silverstein about the new mayors and council members academy in January. But I will be reaching out to anyone who's newly elected, and I would appreciate any contact information that the city managers can provide to me. I've been sort of scraping from their campaign websites and other things to try to figure out how best to get in touch with them, but I plan to kind of reach out next week once the election are finalized. So I think that's all from me, but please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Jeff. Terry, this brings us to our updates from legislative staff and agency partner section of meeting. Who do we have?
I don't know if anyone else is still on the line. Oh, I see Aurelia.
There's Aurelia, yeah. Hi, Aurelia, go ahead.
I'll just keep it short because I know we're running a little bit over time and I have to jump off in a few minutes. So the Congressman introduced 2 bills that are noteworthy for this group over the past month. One is the Prevent Homelessness Act. It's HR 8674. And that bill would authorize $500 million in annual grants to establish a housing stabilization fund to cover people's short-term expenses such as rent and utilities to increase housing stability, which is really important nowadays since many people are on the verge of falling into homelessness, and there's that need to kind of stabilize rents. So that's an important long-term bill that hopefully will be reintroduced, if not passed this term, but probably introduced next term. The Congressman also introduced the Oversight.gov Authorization Act, which is HR 8694, and that would establish an authorized establishment and maintenance of a website for the public to easily access reports made by the Inspector General. So that's a good transparency bill. Additionally, I just wanted to note that House Democrats worked hard this Congress to get more than 150 bills signed into law through bipartisan efforts. So that's good in terms of progress. And then I also wanted to highlight earlier this month, and I think I sent this out to the group. I definitely sent it out to Terry. The Conversations with Veterans event we host every single year. We had that virtually, and you can find a recording of it on our Facebook page. It's kind of an opportunity if you want to observe Veterans Day a little bit late this time of year, for you didn't get a chance when Veterans Day was happening last week, to kind of listen to stories, veterans who have positive and sad and tragic and funny stories. It's just a good opportunity to reflect and to honor those who have served our country. Additionally, in terms of stimulus bill, I think you know as much as I do. Hopefully we can get something in this period, but if not, I'm hopeful that we can get something at the beginning of next year, and the Congressman will continue to fight for the priorities he has been fighting for all year long to make sure that states and local governments get the funding that they deserve. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Questions for Aurelia? Okay, so that brings us to the end. Anybody else from any of the legislative or agency that we have? I don't see anybody, but okay, back to you, Terry. Any comments? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to, I don't know if there's any general comments or requests for future agenda items, but I would point out that the COG generally doesn't meet in December, so the next meetings would be in January, and that's also when the COG would do the reorganization.
Okay. Any comments? All right, and the next TAC meeting is January 6th, and so that reorganization would be January 19th. Terry, is that the date?
That's
we would?
Correct.
All right. Okay, thanks everybody. Unless I have any other questions for Terry, I'm gonna adjourn the meeting. Happy Thanksgiving. Please stay safe. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.